Is There More is the podcast where creators share how their darkest moments became the breakthroughs that changed everything. We're building a space for raw stories, deep connection, and real hope for everyone who's still writing their story. Brought to you by Dialogue Life Skills, the world's scalable solution to the teen and young adult mental health crisis. I'm your host, Megan A. Tully, and I'm listening. How long would you be willing to chase a dream that keeps rejecting you? Today's guest is an actor and producer who's been trying to answer that question for the past 20 years. You might have seen him on HBO's Silicon Valley, Marvel's Agent Carter, Famous in Love, or Adventures of the Naked Umbrella, which he co-produced and starred in alongside Emmy winner Jeremy Davies and Orange is the New Black's Taryn Manning. But today we're talking about what the credits don't show, which is survival jobs, rejection, reinvention, grief, and the many, many failures that taught him how to keep showing up for his dream. Welcome, Bert Rotundo.
You have to be somebody who is doing everything at this point, you know? Like, I'm writing right now. That's what I've been, since April, I've been working on a TV series that I've been writing that I wanted to do. And so it's like, you got to do everything at this point, you know? It's not just like, okay, I'm an actor now. Like, very few people can just say, oh, I'm an actor, and that's basically all I do. It's rare, really rare.
Would you say that you kind of started like that as more of like, I'm an actor, one thing?
That's what got me started, was acting, you know, the love of acting. I think acting is sort of a gateway drug into the industry.
Yeah,
It's sort of like everybody, you know, does plays growing up and they love it and they have fun with it. And then as more people pursue it as a career, as a profession, I think people's interest wanes. I think they stop having fun. You know, I know a lot of people who are like, I used to love this and now it like stresses me out. And I'm like, at that point, if you can do something that brings you joy and outside of acting, go do that. Go do that. Because this is a thankless, tough, rejection-based business. You have to be kind of crazy to pursue it.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, it started like that.
Yeah, and you've been in some pretty big like shows.
I just did an episode back in January of a brand new show for the show Power. Thank you. Power. It's a new show called Origins, where they're going back and sort of starting the main characters, like starting out, coming up in through the ranks on the streets, you know. And so I did that, you know, which is cool. It hasn't aired yet. The show hasn't aired, and they haven't even announced an air date yet. Yeah, it's really exciting, and everybody on that show was really happy to be there. And, you know, you work on TV sometimes and everybody's sort of like there for a paycheck and like doing their thing. But everybody from like production all the way, you know, costume, it was so nice to be on a set in New York, or actually New Jersey, because they shoot in Jersey, and like have everybody like, yeah, we're doing something, we're making something, you know. And you're like, yeah, this is why I signed up originally. You know, there's nothing worse than getting on a show where everybody, and I'll never name any names, but there's been shows where I've been on and like the leads were not happy, you know, for whatever reason, you know, the show got canceled or this, that, or the other thing. And they just weren't very friendly. They weren't very nice. And you could feel that on set, you know. It's like going to somebody's house that's throwing a party and they're excited to have you there. And then you show up to the party and they're not excited that you're there. That's what it feels like. And you're like, okay, cool. You know, and that kind of sucks, but
yeah,
you show up, you do your work, and you go home.
I actually literally just remembered that you were my first scene partner ever. So that's special.
Was I? What scene? Oh, what was the scene that we did? Was it?
We did.
Was it the Crucible?
Yes, we did the Crucible.
Was that the first? Okay.
Like, what? First of all, why was that my first scene ever? Gosh, Sal. He really likes to throw you in there.
He definitely throws you into the deep end just to see what your swimming skills are, you know, and that's what was his. And he would coach you. He would coach you into the shallow water, really, really like effortlessly, you know.
Yeah.
Working with him for as many years as I did, it was to see him work and start to get to understand how he would teach and how he directed and also taught, because they were two kind of little. He directed me in a bunch of stuff as well. To see the difference, but just how effortless he made it look to be able to get an actor from
Yeah.
to find their way to the truth of the circumstances of the scene or whatever it was that was really holding them back. He had this innate ability to kind of look into someone's soul and be like, all right, and draw them into the light so that they would discover it on their own. And that was, I've worked with a lot of acting teachers, and some of them are really good at it. Some of them are a little bit more forceful than others, but
Mm.
he just made it look like it was your idea.
Yeah,
He was really good at that. Really, really good at that.
totally. And
Um,
I don't know about you, but for somebody like me, I have to like do it to really understand it. He was super, super special in the way that he, yeah, like found it's
yeah.
you said like brought our soul into the light, and I'm like brought me into my own soul, like, like in a way. So
Yeah.
he was
His
very,
class really, I mean, I studied with a lot of people. I went to the American Musical Dramatic Academy in New York City and studied theater and learned a lot of really great skills that sort of, also wasted on a guy who was like 19, 20 years old. I'm in New York City, living on my own. It was, it was a lot. I find that a lot of kids that go to college, it's sort of kind of wasted on the youth because you're still kind of coming into who you are as a young person and kind of figuring out who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And you go to college and now all of a sudden you just come out of like 12, 13 years of like regimented school. And now you're in this place where no one's sort of breathing down your neck. It's all on you. And for some people that it works, and other people it's more of like I'm free, baby, yeah, let's go. And you don't maybe pick up as much. And it was a very kind of like close knit group of people. It was a studio program. So like you were studying with the same people every semester. So you kind of built this camaraderie and this family unit. But there was a lot of stuff that kind of went over my head in at AMDA that I just didn't get, but it kind of got stored back in like some old hard drive RAM there. And then when I started working with Sal, I was at a place in my own craft working with him that it started to all the stuff all started to kind of all the stuff that didn't make sense that I was like, whatever. Yeah, okay. I just want to act, bro. And then all of a sudden now all the voice and speech training, the movement training, the Alexander technique,
yeah.
all the voice and speech and classical theater training that I had gotten all started to kind of really coalesce. And it was interesting that finding Sal at the time that I did, they say when the student is ready, the master appears. And
Hmm.
I was very much in a place where I was like, what am I doing? I was sort of in LA, wasn't studying, I wasn't booking, I was working a bar job, hating my life. I was in the red, in and out of the red and black financially for the whole time I was in LA, and to find Sal and to find the Friends and Artists studio at that particular time wasn't chance for sure. Like I believe in, that there's some, when you call things into your life when you're ready for them and when you're really serious. And I was very serious and I was sort of kind of floundering. And when I met Sal, it clicked. And all of a sudden, like I said, all those things from college 20 years prior started clicking in. And I just and there was something effortless about the way he taught where I don't think it wasn't a one size fits all. It was more about understanding you and your process and understanding you and me
Yeah.
and being able to sort of pull you out of your comfort zone in a way that you weren't aware that you were out of it yet. And then all of a sudden he'd be like, look, you're out of your comfort zone. You'd be like, oh my God, and then you were like, okay, I can do that. He was really, really, really good at that. And I watched him do it with hundreds of people over the what was it, 15 years that I studied with him off and on.
Wow.
And I was pretty much there. Like I'd book work and I'd go make a movie and I'd be gone for a couple months and then I'd come back. It was home, and got to meet amazing people like you and all some dear friends of mine, people that I'm still working with.
Wow.
I'm doing a play with Wes.
Yeah.
We just started doing a reading last week. Last Monday, we did a reading of a new play by Blake Royster, who wrote Prada and Pumpernickel, and it's moving forward. It was really cool to kind of get in the room. Jesse Blair, who I did Frankie and Johnny in the Claire de Lune, my co-star for life,
Yeah.
and Blake had written these characters, husband and wife characters, for Jesse and I. So to be in the room and read with her again was sort of bringing back the feels. It was like the good
Yeah.
old days.
Wow.
Um,
That's amazing.
yeah. So anyway, I'm, blathering, but
No, this is
um,
exciting. Like I'm so excited because like, well, when did you meet Sal? You said 15 years prior to, I guess. So,
maybe 2009.
yeah.
But I remember him calling me. He's like, "I have this model actress coming in. I want to test her skills. Will you read with her? Will you come in?" And I said, "Sure." And so I popped in and met you. And I can remember you being very. I'm an empathic person, so I get a sense of people pretty much right away.
Mm.
And Sal is even like he was like 10th degree black belt, empath.
Oh, I think Stray
And you,
Cat is the name that you gave me. Stray Cat, right?
the stray cat, yeah, yes, yeah. You were very feral when you first came into the
Feral.
studio.
I
But
could still
and
be
then like
feral.
I stay keep your feralness. I mean, it's
Yeah.
part of who you are.
So COVID hit, the studio got shut down. We kind of lost that. I never really went to online class, but then I think it was 2021. Yeah, where you had already did you already move to New York at that point, or were you just going back and forth?
No,
No, you were going back
2021 we
and
were
forth. Yeah.
we were doing it was during I was still in LA in 2020. I didn't think I moved. I think in
We were
it
roommates
was
in
it was
2021.
right. You and Riley. I was also out of town a lot because I was shooting the Naked Umbrella, Adventures of the Naked
Yeah.
Umbrella. So I was out of town a lot, and I think you guys were sort of watching my place and
Yeah.
um, hanging out and then after that movie was sort of the impetus to like I was just really
Mm,
burnt out. That movie was making movies is tough. That movie was Odyssean in nature. Like it felt like we were the movie gods were testing us, and we came through it with a successful film. But
mhm.
it definitely, I mean, all this gray in my beard was not there before I started shooting that movie.
Wow, because you
I
were
shit
also a
you not.
producer on that too, right?
Yeah, I was a producer and I played one of the leads in the movie. So it was like,
We're doing
spinning
both.
a lot of plates and that location was difficult. We were out in the Salton Sea in July. And anybody who knows the Salton Sea would be like, "What are you crazy? Why?" We weren't. Our intentions were not to shoot in July. It was sort of we were going to shoot in May.
Mm,
And in fact, we were in the middle of casting, and the conversation had come up because casting, when you're going out to star names, you can't just go out willy nilly to a bunch of star names. You have to by union contract, I have to give you, if I go to you for this role in this movie, I have to give you a set amount of time to read the material, decide if you want it, and then come back to the table. And if you're interested, if you don't pass, then we can negotiate and talk all that stuff. And so, we would send it out to an actor and wait to hear, and you'd have to give them about a week.
mm.
So, you go out to 4 people, that's a month gone,
Wow.
and then you get 4 no's and you're still where you were. So we ended up finding ourselves being in a place where we needed to push, and then all of a sudden there was this like we have to go, and now we're shooting in July, and it was brutal. The average temperature, like the low was like 105 at like the peak
Oh,
of
wow.
night, and I was talking to locals because we were there for like 6 7 8 weeks on location. I left to go to Palm Springs to see Wes and Blake,
Yeah.
but I was not in LA for like 8 weeks. And so being out there, and the locals who sort of live there would get away, and they were like, "What are you guys? You guys are nuts. You guys are nuts being out here." Because it was like it
That's so
ranged from about 108 to about 125 degrees,
what?
and yeah, it was
Oh my
hot. When we were shooting at Salvation Mountain, we had to do splits. We had to shoot sunrise because one of the main characters wakes up at Salvation Mountain at sunrise,
mm-hmm.
and then we had to break around 9:30, 10 o'clock. So we were there pre-sunrise, camp set up, and then around 9:30, 10 o'clock, we broke, sent everybody back to Bombay Beach where our base camp was, and then went back around 5 or 6 o'clock when the temperature started to come down. I mean, it was still 110 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
but so we could shoot the opposite way and get the light to match. It was brutal. It was like 3 or 4 days there in those kind of conditions, and it was brutal.
Yeah, no,
At 105 degrees, things stopped working. Technology,
yeah.
cameras, cars, people.
people.
It was a real
It's
test of
yeah,
wills. So
yeah.
so when I was done with that, I was like, I think I'm done with LA. And not just for
Done
that
with
reason, but
LA or
I
done with like acting or done with
no, done with LA. I was very much looking forward to coming back to New York for the summer. I had some family stuff that I needed to come back for, and I kind of just extended my stay. I had no reason to be in LA. You and Riley were staying at my place, so it allowed me to kind of like I had, that was all taken care of, and so I came for an extended vacation. And it took about a month for my shoulders to unpin from my ears because it was just there
wow.
was so much stress of making that movie. It was tough. It was really, really a brutal movie. Um, in fact, if we made a movie about the making of this movie, it would have been more of a stressful experience.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it was a lot. I mean, that's a whole podcast in and of itself talking about that particular production. But
nice.
it happened for a reason, and I'm back in New York now, and very sunburned, as you can tell. I played in a volleyball tournament, and I wore a hat on backwards and sunscreened up. Now I have like a landing pad. I almost canceled on you
I
because I
don't
was like, I can't.
see like I can't tell.
Good,
It's a
good.
circle?
Now
I
it's like so. Like I had a hat on backwards, baseball hat, and like the little
oh,
spot that the hat was.
I
Yeah.
can't
So I
tell.
had like a circle. Like if you
Dude, I can't even tell, but maybe like
good.
so okay, so after that movie, it was COVID, you did like the hardest film of your life, and you were
Mhm.
so sick and tired of LA, not acting. You never really got burnt out on acting, right? But
I got no. I did. I actually. I got burnt out on acting, and it wasn't necessarily acting. It was just the industry and this constant rejection of. It felt. I felt like I. I felt like I was in a loveless marriage. I felt like I was married for 20 years to somebody who loved me on their terms when it was appropriate and it was convenient for them, but I never felt like I was getting the love and the respect that I was seeking, and that was a learning experience because it is an industry and it's not personal most of the time. If it is, it's very rare that it's a personal like vendetta against an actor or a person, an artist. Um, but
so
it started to feel that way, and it made me start to kind of really resent the industry and the work. And I'd had this conversation with Sal pre-pandemic about how like I was just really kind of fed up and tired and burnt out. It stopped being joyful. And that's why we get into it to begin with, is because, as a kid, we did plays and we had so much fun. And then some of us crazy people decide that I'm going to make this my living. And then I think if we realize going in just how daunting the adventure, like if Bilbo Baggins knew just how crazy leaving the Shire was going to be in the Lord of the Rings, nerd alert, I'm going to nerd out on you.
he would
Um,
never left.
I I don't. He would have never left the Shire,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's part of the journey. But that journey in and of itself is what shapes you as a human being. Hopefully, you get some dirt on you, and you get some bumps and bruises and breaks and scrapes and rejections and heartbreaks and successes, and all of that coalesces into who you need to be in order to be successful. Because there is nobody. I would wager there's nobody that is working successfully and successfully at a clip of time that hasn't been doing it for at least a decade.
Hmm.
Maybe some kids that got their break, and they've just progressively been working, but that's rare, man. It's really, really rare. But I wouldn't have it of any other way. Like when I was a kid, I auditioned when I was probably like single digits age. Like it was the 80s, and there was an open call for an Oliver Stone movie starring Tom Cruise for Born on the 4th of July. It was a book based on Ronnie Kovic, who's from Long Island, where I'm at right now. And he went to Vietnam and lost his legs. He became a paraplegic or quadriplegic, no, paraplegic. Sorry. And don't quote me on that. I don't remember now. It's been so long. But he wrote a book about his life, and then they were making this movie, and Tom Cruise was going to play he was going to play Ronnie Kovic, and they were looking for a young Tom Cruise. So they did this huge cattle call, and I went to this audition. My dad took me and went, and there was like thousands of kids outside of Massapequa High School, and a woman walking around with a bullhorn going, "You come with me, you come with me, you can go home, you can go home," like just really kind of weeding out the herd. And this woman came up to me. I was there with my cousin Kim, and they sent my cousin Kim home, but they're like, "You come with me." And so they took us inside to the high school, into the gymnasium, filled out a bunch of paperwork. They gave us signs and waited another 2 hours and then read with somebody. I vaguely remember this. I was pretty young. And then I got a call back, and then another call back. And I went into the city and I read for Risa Brahman, Risa Garcia, the casting director, who's now Risa Brahman Garcia. I think she wasn't married at the time. And I think there were like 10 callbacks.
Wow.
And I really loved movies. My dad was a big movie buff. And it turns out that my dad wanted to be an actor. And I found out when I graduated high school that my grandfather, his father, wanted to be an actor.
What?
And so they were very I was very lucky, fortunate to have parents and friends and family who just kind of knew, like, Bert's not going to go the regular path. This is what he wants to do. And everybody kind of was very supportive.
Yeah, they
So I was
probably
very
felt like
lucky.
they were living vicariously through you in some ways.
They were, my dad still is. My dad still, calls me and like he'll like watch a movie and call me and like, "Have you seen this?" Or I was watching. He's very much like he still loves it.
What
And
did they end up
but
doing? Your dad and grandfather.
oh, my poor dad, he worked a town job. He bartended when he first had my sister and I, my mom and my dad. My dad was working a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, a civil servant's job, getting paid crap, but the benefits were good because he had a family, young family. And then my grandmother owned a bar and restaurant about 30 minutes away from where we are right now. And my dad moonlit as a bartender Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So my dad was working 7 days a week.
Wow.
Bartending, and I kind of grew up in the restaurant industry. I started washing dishes when I was a little kid because my mom was like, "Hey, you want to make money or do you want a babysitter?" And I'd be like, "I want to make money." So, like my mom was cooking in the kitchen and I was there washing dishes so that she didn't have to. They, could have moved it along, and I got my start, I cut my teeth, and I've been in the restaurant business all my life. And it's a great profession to have, especially in the chosen profession that, I'm pursuing, because it's flexible.
Yeah.
And it's cash, and you can take as much time off as you want. And it's a profession that you can do all over the world. And it's pretty cookie cutter, the same thing. And, and I became a bartender, and I bartended for 30 years. And I still do it on occasion, just to make ends meet, to kind of like keep it, so I'm not going into my savings while I'm working on creative projects or between projects. So don't quit your day jobs, kids, as much as you might hate them.
Was
And
there
as somebody who's been bartending for a long time, yeah, you start to hate it.
Yeah. Well, shoot. Hey, what's up, you guys? If you're new to the channel, I'm Megan A. Tully. I'm an actor and filmmaker turned content creator and also the host of this podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. If you are, please hit that like button. Please hit subscribe, turn your notifications on to stay updated and never miss an episode. Over here, we're always turning breakdowns into breakthroughs. So if you or someone you know has an epic story of how they turn their pain into purpose, go ahead and also leave a comment. DM at Is There More World with your story on Instagram, and yeah, just join the community. We also teach dialogue life skills for better relationships and improve mental health for free once a month online. This is also on a YouTube Live. If you haven't checked that out yet, there's an episode under the Lives tab of this channel. But I'm really excited to keep sharing that skill with the world because it completely transformed my life and is a big part of my pain to purpose story. So enough about me. Let's get back to Bert and back to the show. Thanks for listening. I mean, if you overdo anything, I feel like you start to hate it. Was there
Absolutely.
Have you ever quit your day job? Was there like a time where you did quit and you're like, because I've done that before where I was like, well, I've done it a lot actually. Every time I had a day job, I quit within like 3 months. And then eventually I'd be like, oh crap, I got to get another day job.
Got to make money. Like, well, it's funny. There was a moment where you take those leap of faiths, where you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I left the restaurant business a couple times. I left a great bartending job, working with great people in LA. It was a place called the Village Idiot on Melrose. It's no longer there. They gave that place was so amazing. And the greatest restaurant and bar I ever worked in, and I worked in a lot of them, and I've worked in a lot of really good restaurants and bars. And this place was sort of the best. I left that job to produce my first feature film.
Oh wow.
So I was sort of I was working with Ryan Reese and Jerry Brunskill, the guys that I made Naked Umbrella with, but I'd helped them do a sizzle reel for to get raise the money to do a movie called It's God that I ended up being an associate producer on, and I had like a really small role in it. I got to work with Tommy Chong and Rebecca Mader, the late Luke Perry, who was just a sincerely sweet and gentle and awesome man. Anybody that knew him, spoke so highly of him because he was just this great person. And Boo Boo Stewart and a bunch of really great people, and Susanna Hillard and Cindy Vila and all these great actors. And we were working it again. It was a ragtag sort of like low budge movie, but we made it work because everybody was wearing multiple hats. And so I had to leave. I couldn't do the movie and also bartend. And I tried to take a leave of absence. And Pete Crowner, my manager, who was the guy that I replaced so that he could become the GM when I signed on to be a bartender there. And he kind of sat me down. He looked at me and he's like, "Do you really want to come back to this?" And I was like, "I don't really think so." And he goes, "Well, then don't, man." And I was burnt out, and he could tell and he could sense it, and so I kind of took that leap and I made It's God, and that was a great experience. And then I was sort of like that ended, and I didn't make a lot of money on it. It wasn't like life-changing financially, independent film rarely is. But I made some money, but not a lot, not enough to like be able to like sustain myself for a period of time. I had to find work, and so I was determined not to go back to the bar business. And I decided that I was going to stay in production. And I PA'd. I met a lot of really good people on that production, and they sort of our line producer Randy Babbitt, sort of threw me some work and knew that I had a good work ethic and honestly, being in the restaurant business and having that sense of urgency that comes with working in a restaurant and a bar really, really crossed over into production. As you meet people who've never worked in the restaurant business at a period of time, you can tell they just don't get it. They just don't have that urgency of like, got to get this done, got to move, got to move, got to move.
Yeah.
In the restaurant business, it's like if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. And so you were always busy because you didn't want to take all the bottles off and do all the dusting or whatever. But so I left there and I bounced around doing weird, odd production jobs for a couple of years. I want to say like 2 years, and it was tough. And I was barely making ends meet, working a lot of odd jobs. And then I popped into a bar that friends owned in Toluca Lake called the Red Door. Again, not there anymore. And I popped in to see a bartender that I knew who happened to be bartender. I went to go see a movie and I popped in to say hi and have a beer and chat with him. And when I was there, one of the owners, Michael and Lee, were there, the bartender, and I had bartended with Michael at another bar years before this. So I knew them both really, really well. And they kind of kept looking over their shoulder and looking at me. And I'm like, "What are you two ladies talking about over there?" They're like two little biddies, And I'm like, what do you, And Mike was having a knee surgery, and Lee had to go out of town to take care of some family business in Florida for like, I think it was like 3 weeks. And they didn't have anybody to cover his shift. And they're like, "You want to make some money? You want to bartend?" And I was like, "Oh no." Oh no, it was that like, that Michael Corleone, I tried to get out, but they pulled me back in, but it was for 3 weeks. And I was like, you know what? It'd been 2 years and I was hurting for money. And I knew it was cash and it was going to be great. And so I went and I did it for 3 weeks and it was fun, but I ended up 5 years back behind that bar. And that job was kind of the linchpin and I worked that job until the Naked Umbrella came along. And that's what got me out of it. And I left to go and do that movie. And after that movie was, like I said before, was just
After that movie, bartending wasn't so bad.
bartending was like, all right, this is easy. At least it's the AC is on, and so I did, but I got pulled back into it, and then actually, so no, I left that job again because it gotten really toxic and the owners were not getting along, and mommy and daddy were fighting, and I felt like the oldest child in a couple that's divorcing, and I was sort of getting pulled in many different directions. It was just not a fun place to work at that point. And so I left, and 2019 was probably the roughest year I'd ever had up until my mom got sick. I'd never experienced such like just this fight or flight experience of just not being able to pay rent and bills and having to be like, okay, I'm going to pay this bill because this one's due, and then I'm going to have to be late on having to strategize and knowing that I just didn't have enough to make ends meet. And I was working for friends, doing odd jobs. I started driving Postmates. And when I started driving Postmates, I remember doing my first delivery. I was working odd jobs, doing driving work. My car was in the shop. I had a friend who was in New York who I had a double parking spot in my apartment. So I was using their car.
Wow.
To drive, and because my car died. And as I was doing that job, I remember I was working for a friend who owned this like production house company, and they needed drivers. So I like whenever I would wake up every morning, call my friend who was working for them, like, any work today? And he'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I'll have work for you tomorrow. And so I would literally get up, pack a sandwich or two sandwiches, and go and get in my friend's car and go and drive Postmates from dusk till dawn. And I remember the first delivery I had, I had picked up sushi in the valley, dropped it off some house in Toluca Lake. And I remember, like, it was my first delivery. I didn't know what I was doing. So I knocked on the door and I put it down. And then I saw that they wanted me to leave it. And so I got back in the car, and then bling, so-and-so says, thank you. They left you $5 or $10 or whatever the tip was. And I just remember bawling, crying. I remembered like having this like breakdown, like, what is my life? Oh my God, like this is rock bottom. Like, I was so thankful in the moment for that, whatever the tip, or $11 or whatever it was. These people are eating like $200 worth of like Nobu sushi.
Right.
And here I am like eating like a sandwich because I can't afford, I can either buy gas to put in the car to drive Postmates, or I'm going to eat a sandwich. So
Yeah.
and I did that. And I just remember being just in this sense of like adrenaline pumping at all times. Like adrenaline fatigue is a real thing.
Mhm.
And then I did that. And then I found a bartending job working like Sundays at a bar in Toluca Lake. And I was happy for it. I was working brunch. I opened the bar in the morning, and it was like the worst shift you could get. And as somebody who had bartended for like at that point, maybe 25 years, like it was the worst of the worst. I was like
Shit.
waiting. I was making Bloody Marys and taking breakfast orders, but I was happy for the job because at least it was consistent and steady.
Yeah.
And I ended up building up regulars. But then I was at that job when the pandemic hit. And I may have caused the pandemic in the sense that I worked in an Irish bar. And I remember being like, thank God I don't have to work St. Patrick's Day. Because any bartender who's ever worked a bar on St. Patrick's Day, it's New Year's and St. Patrick's Day is like amateur hour. And it is just brutal, and it just destroys your soul. And I was like, thank God St. Patrick's Day is not on a Sunday. And then I found out that I was working. Everybody was working St. Patrick's Day. And I was like, oh no, oh no. Oh, how am I going to get out of this? And I prayed to the universe, and the universe was like, well, you can either work St. Patrick's Day or there's going to be a global pandemic. And I was like, I don't know what a global pandemic is, but that sounds much cooler than working St. Patrick's Day. So we'll take that. Option B, please. And you're welcome, world.
What?
So, yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so I remember they ended up closing down. But what was really interesting is that it closed down, and I didn't realize how adrenaline fatigued I was and how anxious I was, because I was in this fight or flight. I literally was in a place where I was like not being able to pay my rent for like 2 weeks in, and then being like, here it is, so sorry, thank you. And, and my landlord trying to get me like $75 out of me for like late. And I was like, I'm not paying that. I can't afford it. I can either pay you that $75, or I can buy more sandwich stuff so that I can go and drive Postmates,
Right. So
and when the pandemic hit,
rent.
it was brutal, man. I'm in my 40s, and I'm like, what is my life? Like, honestly, like, this is not what I signed up for. But then the pandemic happened, and something really interesting happened was no one could evict us. They couldn't shut off our power. They couldn't shut off our utilities. So I had like this buffer where I had time to kind of let the adrenaline and the anxiety and that fatigue drain away, and the worry of not having to worry about bills, not worrying about jobs, and like not being able to leave the house. And I'm a creative person. So all these things that I had been putting off onto the back burner all of a sudden now started to reemerge because A, I wasn't exhausted.
Mhm.
B, I had nothing better to do. And C, I didn't have to worry about money. And it was this, I think I had probably one of the best kind of reconnecting with myself experiences over that time. And I thrived during the pandemic because I do well on my own. I do well, like just give me a pad and a pen and some crayons and I'll make a book,
Yeah.
like given, I don't have to be somewhere, I'm not getting pulled out of this creativity to go earn money. And so the pandemic started that way. And while that was going on, Jerry Brunskill, director of It's God, the movie I made before, and I had worked on countless other projects, little video projects and commercials. And, he would always call me. It was the dream team. We'd always get the dream team together. Ryan Reese, him, a couple other guys. And he called me and he's like, hey, I'm writing this new movie, my second film. And I want you obviously to come out and produce, but I love you as an actor and you always come out and knock it out of the park for me as a producer. And I know it's sort of like your passion is acting. So I've got the basic premise for this movie, but I would love to write you a really like the role of your dreams. So I'm calling you to ask you, what is that? What is the role of your dreams? And I was like, Jerry, are you messing with me? Because outside of like the acceptance speech, holding a shampoo bottle, thanking the Academy for, this award, the second most rehearsed speech an actor I think has in the shower is talking to a director about their dream role.
Yeah.
And so we talked for like 2 hours, and Jerry went off and wrote Charlie Curtin, this guy, my character in the Adventures of the Naked Umbrella, which you can see on Prime. You can rent it on Prime.
The link in the
And
description below, guys. You could check Bert out.
thanks.
You remember me? I don't believe I've had the pleasure. You cut the bullshit. You showed me reduction.
Yeah, really fun, quirky movie. And that was the movie that I was talking about that nearly killed us. So like go and see it just for that reason, But
It is a great movie. It's very interesting and funny and like adventurous.
It's a weird sort of pandemic-y kind of movie, and it's a movie that is bound to have a cult classic following, I think, in that David Lynchy sort of like, go and see it and make your own opinions. I won't tell you any more about it. So Jerry and I went out to the Salton Sea and went out there, and he was writing the movie, and we started shooting a proof of concept. He had the first like 15 pages of the movie, and we went out there with 2 actors and shot it, and we produced it on our own, and it was bare bones out in July in the Salton Sea in that heat. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Salton Sea, especially Bombay Beach. It is a surreal experience. The people are beautiful people, but there is something really, really kind of disconnected from the world. I don't, not in a negative way, but I feel like that particular place is the last stop on the train before you take the train into the underworld.
You're really selling it.
It's definitely not the place you want to vacation, unless you're up for an adventure. But we went there, we shot, and then a year to the day that we shot this sizzle, we had raised the money and we're making the actual feature, which is something a testament to Jerry Brunskill, because that man, when he gets something in his mind, he makes it happen hook or by crook, and he really, really did. And it was just the fact that we got that movie made is a testament to that man and Ryan Reese as well. Like that team we were like Navy SEALs behind enemy lines without any ammunition, and we managed to get everybody out of there alive.
So that movie got you out of another bartending job. And then
Got me out of another bartending job.
The movie ended, and then you're still in LA at this point. You decide you hate LA. And then what happens?
Well, so I didn't hate LA. Let me
Okay,
like there's a
that's
lot of hate.
strong
There's a
language.
lot of hate for LA, and I'm a staunch protector and guardian of LA. I'm in New York now, and I hear people like, "Oh, you lived in LA?" And I'm like, "Have you been?" They're like, "No," but I'm like, "Then shut up. You don't know what you're talking about." I love people that have an opinion about something that they know nothing about. There's a lot of that going around lately.
I love LA personally, but
LA is beautiful. It's
but
beautiful.
don't
It's a
move there
great
now.
place and
Don't
great
move
people.
there now. Don't move there now.
It's tough. It's going through a resurgence. It's shedding its old skin and becoming its newer, better, higher vibrational self.
Don't need like
And that
years though.
couple more years. And good for the people that stuck it out. I have friends that are there that are in the industry that are still there, and you guys are fighting the good fight. So keep it up. We need people like that. I just personally was just over the industry in LA and felt like maybe New York. It's a theater town. That's where I got my start. I think maybe LA was more of a film town. And there, I felt I had Frank Ross, Frank, directed me and Frankie and Johnny, Jesse and I, and Frankie and Johnny McClure de Lune. And one of the things that we had lunch when I decided to move, when I went back to LA to pack up, him and I had lunch. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like, I'll be taken a little bit more serious. The craft will be taken serious. And he goes, here's the difference between New York and LA. He said, you go into an audition in New York. Oh, hi, Megan. Thanks so much for coming in. They look at your headshot. It's a great picture. It looks like you. Great. They turn over your resume. Oh, wow, you did this play. Oh, wow. Oh, you did Shakespeare. Wow. Oh, wow. You played Juliet. Wow. What was that experience like? Holy cow, you worked with such and such. Wow, this person's a great director. Great actor. Wow. Wow. Okay, great. What do you have for us? They're. And then he goes, in LA, you're walking down the street and some director comes over to you, some guy, random person comes over and goes, excuse me, are you an actor? And you're like, oh, no, I'm not. And you're like, no, wait, hold on. Yeah. You're like, great. Let's get them in hair and makeup. Don't worry. You just say the lyrics, just hit your mark. You'll be fine. Let's get them in hair and makeup. And you're like, wait, what? I'm not an actor. And you become this person. That, in a nutshell, is how LA kind of feels, because it is an industry and it's burning and churning, and there's a lot of money to be had there and made there. And I think, unfortunately, LA, and maybe I'll be the first to say this, but I think LA makes safe choices in terms of casting sometimes. I think they're because it's the camera and it's all about picking prettier people. I've seen a lot of people come through classes who couldn't act their way out of a paper bag, but were getting opportunities because they looked good on camera, because they were pretty or they were handsome and they had a certain type about them. I've coached a lot of people who are not ready to be working those roles, but they're getting those opportunities because they look that way. And that was hard. It was hard to coach people and watch people come into class and bring material that you would cut off your left arm and give it to somebody just to get a chance to audition for those. And you're not getting them because you don't look like these people. Britain does that. You watch BBC, you watch these shows, and you have these brilliant actors on these shows that would have been cast in LA with these Adonis-looking guys and these supermodel-looking women. But instead, in London and in the UK, they're hiring people because they're great actors.
Everybody's a great actor there.
Right? And so I think LA, I think people want to see real people. I think we're getting to a place where, yes, of course, there's always going to be that place for that beautiful, handsome man, and that beautiful leading woman. But at the end of the day, I think people are tired of watching TV and especially now with this whole influencer universe, people are tired of being made to feel like they're not enough. We go to the theater and we watch movies to ingratiate ourselves in the human experience. And part of the human experience is being human and being the average everyday human being. Yes, sex sells. Okay, great. But at the end of the day, I want to have an emotional connection and an emotional experience with somebody. That's why the theater will never die. AI is never going to do theater. AI is not going to take over parts. This is a fad. And yeah, it'll be around, and AI has a place in the industry. I think it streamlines certain things. I think people are going to have to readjust and pivot the same way that when we went from ice blocks to refrigerators, the guys who didn't shift into repairing refrigerators, like it's happening, it's here. Get used to it. But I don't think it's going to replace creatives. I don't think it's going to replace writers. I don't think it's going to, Tilly Norwood off, excuse me. Like absolutely not. And I'm sorry, you can bleep that out, but no. And to be honest with you, the way I feel about it is I guarantee you, I forget her name, whoever the woman who created Tilly Norwood was a person who was in my shoes, who got fed up with getting told no and went off and decided to do it. There's definitely those people that go out there that are like, I'm going to remember the names of all the people who said no. And when I finally win my Oscar, I'm going to have that Julia Roberts moment. Like, you guys work in commission? Well, big loss, like, and I have moments, I have fantasy moments of that. Like all the agents that said no, all the people that decided not to cast me because I wasn't pretty enough, or I didn't have enough followers on my social media,
Did they tell you that though?
I know people that have had that happen to them. I've had people, say it. And, my response to that is, you know what? I don't want to work with you. If your basis of what my caliber of talent and what I bring to the table as an artist, as an actor, it's not my word, a creative polymath, because I write and direct and produce and I'll do all of that. If you're too busy looking at my followers on Instagram, well then I really don't want to work with you, because you're not the caliber of human and artist that I want to be surrounding myself with. And that's something, I think it's okay to say no to things. Like I've turned down auditions because I'm like, that's not who I want to represent. I don't want to play the white cop that pulls an African-American man out of his car and is the douchebag. I don't want to play that role. That's not who I am as a human being. And that's not who I want to, I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype anymore. There are people who can do it much better than me, you know? And so I think the power of saying no to certain things that don't work for you is what makes you a stronger, better artist. Because at the beginning of it, we're all like, yes, 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 yes. And you should say yes. Because until you get to a place where you realize, I don't like this, I like this, no to that, yes to this. But that takes time. And that was going back to talking about having dirt on you and that experience of failing forward, always failing forward, creating your own work, learning from that experience, and then saying, okay, we're not going to do that again. We're going to do this. We're going to go at it this way. That's the true experience. And so having come through a lot of failures and rock bottom moments, you come to a place where you're like, that doesn't interest me anymore. I'm not that hungry anymore where I'm going to just say yes to every role that comes in, because it doesn't challenge me, or B, especially if it's a non-union job. I won't work non-union. I'm not going to undermine the union and the strength that it has, because it's a collective bargaining tool. I'm not going to go work a non-union commercial for some crappy paycheck that these corporations are, it pisses me off that, oh, look who it is.
Hi.
Excuse me, Allie, we're live here.
So is she.
Yeah, she's like, I'm right here. What are we talking about?
I'm alive.
Hi,
Okay, so take me to, so it's COVID. You end filming The Naked Umbrella. Hey, Allie, girl.
She's just letting you know that
before we went on the LA tangent, you decide that, maybe you want to move, or maybe you just want to change. And was there any more factors that played into your decision in wanting to leave LA? Because you have family in New York, right?
My mom and my stepdad were here. And then I kind of moved here with just sort of like this, there was something exciting about the idea of just coming back to New York after 20 years in LA, of cutting my teeth. I was not the same actor, I was not the same human being, I had hair when I moved to LA, and then I was moving back with no hair. But 20 years had passed and I'd become a man in LA. And and an artist that I was proud of, I felt like I had something to offer New York. And so when I came here, I was kind of excited of being like, I'm back, baby. Let's go. I'm back. Let's, let me show you what I got, And so I came back, and then I was here. I reconnected with an old manager that I had, and she's still managing me. Susu Stanton is awesome. She knows everybody. She remembers the rainbow when it was black and white. She's been in the industry for that long. I reached out to her and, she's like, what do you want? And I was like, I'm looking for rep, and she's like, well, send me his stuff. And she sounds like Joey Tribbiani's from Friends' agent. She's got this like, what do you want? She sounds like she, drinks whiskey and smokes cigarettes every day of her life. And she's tough and she's awesome. And she called me the next day after I sent her my material and she's like, oh my God, you've grown. You as an actor. Oh my God, I want to work with you. Of course I want to work with you. And so it was great. It was kismet, and came back, started auditioning and getting put on a veil left and right. And hadn't booked anything until Power, and it took a couple years for me to like kind of reintroduce myself to casting here. And then my mom got sick. And so she got a terminal cancer diagnosis, and there was 6 months from when my mom had just turned 70 years old, and a week to the day after her 70th birthday, she had gone in, she was a little short of breath, went in to have a chest x-ray or chest scan, and like 5 minutes later, she got back to the house, and 5 minutes later, the doctor called and told her she had lung cancer. And so we scrambled. My stepdad, a rock star, and my sister flew up from Texas. My sister works in the medical field. And so we were all here with my mom. And from diagnosis to my mom passing was 6 months.
Wow.
And I got, what was really interesting is when I moved to New York, I didn't know why. There was just this sort of little hand on my shoulder that says, you need to be in New York. And it wasn't just career. It was just like, I just felt like I needed to change, And having 6 months, that extra time, like those 2 years, I think I was here for like a year or 2 years, maybe. My mom and stepdad would go back and forth to Florida. And so I was here with them in the summer, and then they'd go back in the fall, and I'd have the house for the winter. In fact, I came back for a winter after the Naked Umbrella. I came back, and it was my stepdad. It was like, hey, you're working. I was working on a book, loosely working on this a novel, and he's like, well, you'll have the house to yourself all winter. Why don't you come back and spend the winter? And I was like, well, let me see if I can, check these 5 boxes off, and one of which was getting somebody to take care of my place. And you were like, I can do it. So I was like, cool. And I remember the morning I woke up and I had this like massive flood of anxiety, not just because I was like 20 years of like life in LA and now coming back to where I grew up, but also I went for this walk. I had all this anxiety. I went for this walk. There's a park like a mile down the street, and I walked all the way to the water, listening to music and sort of just being like, am I making the right decision? It was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like very scared, very scared. And I had this moment as I turned around. I had seen this ferry going across the Great South Bay and thinking about my time in summer in New York, because it was winter time at that point, or spring, and it was still cold here. And I was walking back up the path. And as I'm walking up the path, I had this really interesting experience where the me who went to LA, the young 25-year-old Bert, who had gone to LA, confronting me on this path in the woods, came up, and he was pissed. He was really, really pissed, because when he packed up his life here in New York to drive across country to LA, he was ride or die. It was no sleep till we're successful. We're going to make it in LA, and he was still in that place. So like that 25-year-old kid who was leaving to go to LA confronted me on the path. And he was pissed. And this obviously all happening in my mind. I'm not crazy, I'm a little crazy, but he comes walking up to me and he's like, really, you think New York is the answer? And it was surreal. It was a very surreal experience. As I'm like kind of listening, I'm looking at this young version of myself, and he kind of looks at me, looks me up and down, and he goes, so this is us in 20 years? And I go, yeah. He goes, well, we look good. I was like, thanks, and he goes, so I could see in his eyes, I could see this rage kind of, and he goes, and you think that New York is the next step? I said, I do. I really do. And he goes, all right, well, if you think so, I trust you. Let's do it. And I realized that the young version of me that went out there and was like, had seen this coming back to New York as a failure and as throwing in the towel. Whereas 20, me current at that moment was seeing it as the next chapter, the reinvention, we learned everything we needed from LA at this point. It's time to pivot and shift. And this is the next chapter of my career. And it was like I needed that last bit of permission from the ride or die Bert at 25 to tell me it was okay, and that like he was giving me his blessing to come, and I was like, oh boy, you don't even know what's in store for you in those 20 years in LA. But in those 20 years is who I am now because of all that trial and tribulation and failure after failure and rejection after rejection and just personal failure and, professional failure, but then success and all the learning and the teachers and all of that. I don't regret any of it because it made me this guy who is ready to take this next step. There's the Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, you know, you follow your bliss. The young fool sort of gets this call to go on this adventure, not knowing the Bilbo Baggins is the perfect example. That is Joseph Campbell or Luke Skywalker. They get this call to adventure and they follow their bliss and they follow this adventure and they go through all these trials and tribulations. There's this circle. And what it really is them learning who they are. And there's like the mythological dragon at the end of this journey that, the hero fights this dragon, but the dragon isn't like in Western civilization, the dragon is this mystical monster who needs to be slain, who's evil and dark and is the shadow of mankind, right? And you slay this dragon and you get this treasure, you get the dragon's hoard, and then you take that treasure after succeeding and you bring it home. You return home forever changed for the better and having grown. And you get the treasure is the experience that you get to share with the next person who's going to go on the adventure, and in Eastern philosophy, in Eastern culture, the dragon is this mystical highest being, sentient being there is in nature, in the natural world, almost like a god. And they encompass all of it, so either you slay it or not, but you become the dragon in essence, and you come home. And so like for me, it was kind of scary because I was like, is this the portion of my life where I'm coming home to like hang up and end my adventures? And it wasn't, but like the young version of me saw it that way. And I had to reconcile with him. And then, and that was before my mom got sick. And so making that decision willy-nilly, kind of like, all right, screw it, I'm going to do this. It allowed me the ability to have that extra time with my mom that I wouldn't have gotten if I stayed in LA, which is priceless.
Yeah.
And then also, like, if I think about it, like, had I been in LA and I got the call that my mom was sick terminally, would I have stayed? I don't know. Like, I don't know where I would have been. It was like the universe was preparing me ahead of time. I really do think, like, the same way that I met Sal was kismet. It was this sort of divine providence. And at least that's how it felt. And I've had moments throughout the course of my life where there has been this divine, where I was ready to throw in the towel, ready to give it all up. And the universe stepped in and was like, you're here for a reason. You're meant to be doing this. And yeah, it's not going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you're just going to be handed this career on a silver platter. You're going to work it, but you're going to work it in a way that's going to build you into the person that you need to be in order to be able to handle success. Because people think that, oh, once I get to be successful, it's all, wine and roses, but it's not. It is a like, getting to that level of success is like playing in the majors, and you have to be ready. You have to had enough failure playing in the minor leagues to be able to come up, because it is you're on a full-on sprint. You think you're busy now working day jobs and working 2 jobs and then auditioning. Yeah, you're busy, But once you get to the level, that's a next bar of work and work ethic that you don't get to fail anymore. You have to bring your A game now. And the failing over 20 years or however long it is until you start to see some success is the training to get you to the place that you need to be. Some people, some people have great work ethic and and it takes 5 years and they kind of see it and they're smart. I'm the sort of slow learner in that way. I kind of learn through feeling my way through things, not psychologically figuring things out. So it was a slower burn for me. And I'm still, like success it's tiered as well. But I'm in this fight, this race, this game. It's a game and you got to learn to play it. But those years of trials and tribulations make you better at the game. Don't hope, like advice that I give to younger actors is like, don't pray for the industry to get easier or the work to get easier. Pray and hope and work to become a better player in the game. If you're a Major League Baseball player, you don't want somebody lobbing the ball over the plate every time you get up to bat. You want them to get up there and throw the fastest pitch that they have so that when you get a hit, you earn that hit. And that's what it's like failing and trials. And if you fail and you didn't learn something from it, then you didn't do enough work and figure out why you failed. Because it could have just been like, the lesson could be like, you know what? I'm too young, too old, too fat, too skinny, too bald, too dark in complexion, too light in like that is all out of your hand, especially as an actor, because it really comes down to this is what you're selling, and it is limited. Yes, I can put on glasses, I can put on a wig, and I can age up and age down and do all of that. But at the end of the day, it's you. It is you. And that is your voice. It's your voice as an actor. That is what you bring to the table. And I've worked with John Dapolito, the niche guy, and I've worked with great branding guys. And, Tom Burke, who's a brilliant branding guy. And I did all that because at one point I realized it's not just about talent. It's about understanding that when you show up to market to the industry as an actor, and that I think goes for any profession, you need to bring your A game. You need to show up to the industry going, this is who I am. This is how I see this role. This is what I bring to this work. And what ends up happening, you see the people that have success, they keep showing up, failure after failure after failure, and they keep bringing this brand, this niche of who they are. And now all of a sudden, those people are household names because they brought themselves. And through those failures, every freaking time, they got a little bit better. They learned something. They learned a little technique, or they learned how to pick themselves up and dust themselves off and say, you know what? I was on a veil for this dream job, and then I got dropped for it. Like, I literally, about a month and a half ago, I had a real rough patch. I had a dear friend who is a brilliant cinematographer who was getting her directorial debut. She was shooting a movie in Colombia. She called me out of the blue. She says, I love you as an actor. I want you. I'm getting you on this movie. I'm going to fly you down on my own dime. I'm going to put you up just so the producers don't have they have no way to say no, right? Then I had another buddy, a co-star buddy of mine, who's a great actor, who had written a piece, called me. He was like, hey, I want to make this movie. I'm writing this role for you. Also want you to produce it. So like within 2 days of each other, I had them call and reach out. Mm-hmm. Then I get put on a veil for a Marvel show that I've been on a veil for several times, and it's finally like a really good role. I had been looking for Atlanta rep in LA and New York rep. I had 4 or 5 friends who were working professionals, each reach out to their rep. I sent all my material over to them. And it was like, everything was like, it was going. And I'm like, this is moving. I'm like, here we go. Okay. Dusting off the cobwebs. And then literally within, I think it was a little over 24 hours of each other, the movie with my buddy in LA, he booked a reoccurring role, actually a series regular role in a movie, that TV show that's shooting. So that gets pushed. We're not doing it now. The Columbia film, I didn't hear back about. It didn't happen. I got released literally the same day. released from the avail for this Marvel TV show. And then two of the friends that were reaching out to their rep, who I never heard back from, had reached out to me to coach with me for some massive audition that the rep that didn't reach out to me had gotten them this audition. And so now I'm basically their instructor. I'm their coach. Like, so there was a lot of like, oh my God, I was ready to be like, I'm done. Like, and people, I think actors you hear about all the success stories, but you don't hear about the transparency about the frustration and but he's like, well, yeah, failure. Yeah, it's part of the job. And then they brush over that and talk about all the success stories. But they don't talk about the times where you just don't want to get out of freaking bed because you've just, like, at that day, I was like, what the F am I doing? Like, am I fooling myself? Am I just stupid and not just taking this hint after 20 plus years of rejection after rejection after rejection? And then you get a job and people are like, you're our favorite actor. And there's all these people, and you got to find your community, and you will. And you also have to not realize that it's not about you. It's not about your talent, unless you're just an asshole, pardon my French. But, if you're just a jerk, then it's probably about you. But if you show up and consistently do a good job and you're a nice person and you're easy to work with, then you're setting yourself up for success. But the failures and all that other stuff comes into things that you couldn't control. Like, even if you wanted to control them, you couldn't control them. And you just have to pick yourself up. What I say is give yourself a day or at least an hour to cry or scream into a pillow, do whatever you need to do, and then let it go, brush yourself off, pick yourself up, and do it again. And you're going to fail again. And then you do it again. And then you do it again. And you do it again. And then every no that you get is one step closer to a yes, because there's a yes right around the corner. So anytime you hear a no, just go, cool. Wasn't meant to be. The next one's going to be even bigger and better. And that's usually what ends up happening. So don't give up. If you're unhappy with whatever you're doing and it's not the like if you don't like acting and you're like, I'm not really having fun, then go find something else. But it's like the one thing, like, there's plenty of ways to get famous in this industry. I had teachers early on in my career say, like, if you're looking to get famous, there are easier, much quicker, faster, lucrative ways to become well known and become famous. If you want to act, then you gotta love the actual thing itself, because you're not entitled to the fruit of your labor. You're only entitled to the labor itself. So if what you're doing isn't making you happy and you're just hoping that whatever it is that you're doing unhappily is going to lead to fame and success and money and notoriety, then go do something else. Go do something that you like to do. Go be an influencer. Go talk about your cat or your new business that you started, or helping people, whatever it is, because maybe acting wasn't your thing. Maybe you just want to do that as a hobby and then go and change the world, saving, lives, as a nurse or whatever it is, and do plays on the side, whatever that is, but be true to yourself. There's very few of us that still love acting. And there are times where I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. There are auditions that I get, and I'm like, I can do this in my sleep. Like, that's not acting. It's not challenging me at all. So after that massive day of like 25 hours, 26 hours of just like let down, I had a friend say, like, hey, like, what is it that you really are passionate about? What is it that you really, really, really like? What's going to light you up inside? Where's that bliss? And if you're in a place where you're just like, I'm burnt out, I don't know, follow your bliss. If your bliss is eating a cheeseburger and having a milkshake in that moment, do that if it makes you feel good.
So what is yours?
So I literally went for a long walk, and a friend of mine, a buddy of mine, had been working on this self-sword sort of fantasy movie. There were like these like sword and sorcery movies in the 80s that I grew up watching. And I always wanted to be in one of those movies early on when I was a little boy, like Beastmaster and like, Dragon Slayer, all these like B movies. But I was like, man, I just wanted to swing a sword. Like I wanted to be in a fight scene with a sword, When I went to college, we started working with swords. I was in my glory.
That's funny.
And so
I was like watching your reel like earlier, and I was like, oh my gosh, my favorite role that you're in is when you're like angry. Like yelling, and like you make a really good intense angry person. So I love this.
I do. I'm a sweetheart in real life, but don't piss me off.
You got an inner fire for sure.
Yeah, but so I went for this walk and I was like, man, my buddy was supposed to do this sellsword movie and it fell through. And so I called him and I was like, hey, is that anything going on with that sellsword movie? Because I have this idea, and like a separate idea from what that movie was. But I kind of like the only thing that I really feel like I want to do is sort of work on this thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to be. But the muses are whispering in my ear. As soon as I let myself kind of get excited about it and think about it, all of a sudden, download. So I was like, oh, I got to start writing. And I started in April working on this series called The Outcasts.
Nice.
Originally, it was going to be a micro drama. I was going to try to get in on that. And I'm like, I don't know yet if it'll definitely be a book.
What's it about? What's like the logline?
So it's very much in the reign of like Lord of the Ringsy, very nerd alert. Hi, my name is Brandon Rain,
Fine. We did,
but like there's
marathons and
I love it
growing up. So
Dungeons and Dragons. It's very Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, my buddy who was going to do this Sword movie, Chad Michael Collins, great actor, great friend of mine, and great champion of mine. And I'm a great champion of his. He's a good dude. I wrote the lead role for him, because he's like me, grew up in the same era, watching the same movies. So it's about a band of outcasts coming together on some quest, very Dungeons and Dragons sort of campaigny, kind of like they go on this quest and they uncover a very nefarious thing and band together and fight the big bads and go on this quest. And it's fun. And I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just writing with something that I would love to watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote myself a role opposite my buddy, and I started writing roles for all my friends, all my actor friends. I'm like, I'm gonna write this role for this guy and this guy and this guy, and and I'm like, if anything happens with it, great. But I had fun writing it, and I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. And I am literally on the third pass. I have 2 more episodes, 12 episodes. It's gonna be more of like a television, like an actual television series.
How long?
I wrote 12 episodes. They're going to be like 35 to 40 minutes. Some of them are longer than others, which is nice about the streaming platform now because it doesn't have to fit into the structure of the old way of network television where you had to, account for commercials. So that's where it's at. I'm third round of edits on this, and it's really shaping up. It's in a place where I can start bringing it to producer friends for notes.
Cool.
And handing it out to Chad and some other friends. I'm really excited about it. And it's really been the one thing that, like, when I have nothing to do, sit down and write for an hour, get her done. And it's been fun. And it's amazing when you actually sit down and start doing something that you're passionate about. The muses show up. They show up and they start whispering in your ear. You just have to be willing to sit down and be quiet long enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And and it's slow right now. There's no real auditions happening right now. And I'm cool. I'm okay because I've got this project that no one else, I'm not waiting on anybody else for it. It's all on me.
Yeah.
So find something like that. Finding something like that to do while you're waiting, because you're failing. Even if you fail, you failed forward. You understand writing now. And as an actor, what do? Is we just interpret other people's writing, and so now I have the perspective of what the writer, when I read words now that I get for a script, I'm questioning, why did the author choose these words, the writer choose these words? Why did they, why? Because now I have my writer brain on, and it makes me just a better actor. It makes me a much better actor.
Oh yeah. Actors should always study writing.
Writing, directing, producing, do it all. Do it all. It'll make you a better actor.
Definitely. you feel like you're very like married to the game, right? Like you like really love acting and that is your thing. But as you went through COVID and the transition back home, and like I know that you draw and you paint a lot, and you started writing a book and then now a series and even producing and even working on sets. Did you find that as you kind of expanded your identity into something greater than just being an actor and a bartender, I guess, you were more fulfilled, or how did that impact you?
I think I remember when I was in my 20s, I started studying martial arts, and I was acting and taking classes. And I realized through the martial arts that for the first time, I realized how each art form sort of overlaps in a like, if there's a circle, each one kind of overlaps on the next one. And there is something to be learned and honed from, like, so for instance, with martial arts, when I first started martial arts, I was very ambitious, wanted to get the black belt right away. And what happens is you start to study, you realize that, like, you're not physically strong enough and flexible enough to do that particular kick or that particular punch. That takes time. That's compounding interest of showing up every day, kicking, punching, failing, kicking, punching, failing. And then the next day, you go and you spar 6 months later, and somebody goes to throw a kick and you block it, and you've been practicing that block. And then they drop their guard, and all of a sudden that kick that you weren't able to do 6 months, you land because you've been practicing it every day. And the martial arts really taught me to start to understand the patience and the process of showing up, that creative process. You can't expect to just come out of the box perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. I like to say it's about getting it just right. You're never going to get it perfect. You're going to get it just right. And so martial arts sort of overlapped into acting. And then as I started painting, and I've always painted and drawn, but then I started to see the similarities of how that patience, but the showing up and the patience of just trust that you're not going to get it on the first read. I'm not going to get the script and then all of a sudden be like, genius, I know exactly how to do this, Yeah. And it's the same way with like doing a big painting or a drawing. You're going to have to come back to that canvas several times, and there's layering to it, and understanding that each time you come back, you're layering it a little bit more. You're sprinkling a little in. I'm Italian, so I like to make the sauce analogy. You're making a pasta sauce for Sunday dinner. You don't just throw everything in the pot, turn it on high, and leave it. You have to keep coming back and adding, and you stir it, and you simmer. You chop up the onions and garlic, and you put that in, and you brown them, and you let them cook on low, and then you add the tomatoes and you cook those down. And every time you show up to that script to learn your lines and work on that role, you're adding something into the pot. And some of those things are at the beginning are really prominent. The garlic is like, wow, the whole house smells like garlic, right? But then later on, all those things that you thought were really important kind of mellow out, and they kind of fall back into the subconscious. Now I'm talking about the role, like those things that, like, oh, this and that, and like my relationship and this thing that happened to me. In that moment, when you have that discovery as an actor, it goes into the sauce pit, right? But it all starts to kind of bubble up and coalesce, and then eventually you have this beautiful sauce, but you can't taste anything one particular, because it's all this beautiful melange of all these different ingredients that took time to combine and cook down and become one. And even with a sauce like that, for instance, you cook it and you have it that night, and you come back to it the next day, it's even better. And then the second day you come back to it, because it starts to take on its own thing. And that's the same thing with writing, like you think I'm going to write that first draft and it's going to be brilliant. And then you go back after writing all 12 episodes of the first draft, and now you come back and read, you've grown as an artist. The story has grown. And so now you're going back to the first episode to put a polish on, and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is so off. And you go back and you rewrite it. And as you rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it, you get back to the end again, just in time to go back and, like, I'm going to read this over again. Because I thought after the second draft, this is going to be ready, camera ready. And I went to, like, read it. And I was like, no, stop. I didn't even go back and do the whole read. I was like, just start the rewrite. And I started the third rewrite. And in that third rewrite, all of a sudden, character nuance and plot line, things that I didn't know, but I had an idea. I didn't know how they all started to kind of interweave. And now that's that patience that I learned from the martial arts. Just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Just do your work. Some days you're going to have a great day and it's going to be great. Some days you get nothing and you're writing for the waste paper basket, but you showed up. And that is the only thing that matters. It's the law of compounding interest doesn't just work with money. It works with everything, and art especially. And once you realize, you kind of hone that patience and that trust and that faith. That word has a lot of connotation, the F word, faith. But it's no one religion owns it, but faith and trust that you did the work. Now just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Keep showing up. And then, if you're smart enough to keep a journal, you look back a year from now and you're like, oh my God, how much I've grown, even in a month. Like me looking at draft 1 after like going in for draft 2, and then going back and doing draft 2, how much I've grown as a writer just in that short period of time, because I was forcing myself to do something.
Yeah. 12 episodes is a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, people don't normally, especially alone, write 12 episodes. They maybe write 1, maybe 2. And then, of course, you go to a writer's room and you get feedback and all that. But 12 is you're on some Tyler Perry life right now. So
I work really well. I work creatively by myself really, really well. And I knew that. That was one of the last things that Romeo said to me before he passed. When we talked, he goes, you work really, really well in your bubble. And then once you have something to show, you bring it out and then you collaborate. But he's like, that bubble for you is really important. Now, some people work collaboratively really well right out of the gate. For me, I was like, this is my idea. This is my baby. And I'm not ready. I haven't, there's times where I can't wait to show it to people. Can't wait. Oh, you get really excited. You have this great moment. You're like, this is the best. And then all of a sudden you're like, you start to tell people about it and then you don't get that reaction, that excitement that you had right out of the gate. So what I will say as a creative, don't show your early drafts to anybody. Don't show your work, your workshopping work to anybody outside of the creative circle until you're ready for feedback, and be ready for feedback. And then when you get the feedback, listen to it, decide whether it's valid or it's somebody's opinion. And you know what? Everybody has their opinion. And, they don't know everything that you know about this creative project that you're working on. They haven't written the Bible. I went off and wrote the Bible for this thing. I already have the 5 seasons of the show already arced out because it started to download to me,
Because you're working on it every day.
Working on it every day. You're in that, but that's when you show up every day. Like, think about this. Like, if you wanted to run a marathon next year or in a month, right? And you showed up and you just ran a little bit, but then you showed up on the day and ran. Yeah, you might be able to run that 26 miles or whatever, a marathon, 24, 26 miles it is.
Run it. You might walk it.
You might walk it, but if you showed up every day and trained for it in a month, you're going to be much better off than where you would be had you not, right? And that's, again, the law of compounding interest. You got to keep showing up, even on days that you don't feel like showing up. It's like going to the gym. You're never going to regret. I built a gym in my garage so that I never miss a workout. You know what I mean? And it's like
low-key a genius, seriously, for that. And
I appreciate it. No, I know who I am, and that comes with age and that comes with time and failing a lot and being real with yourself and learning from every experience and going, wow, why did that not work out? If you can walk away from any failure with a lesson, then it's not a failure. It's a lesson, and you needed that lesson because no one learns anything from succeeding. Constant success will, it won't make you a cool person. It won't make you an enriched person. It won't make you a real successful person, because in order to have success, we live in a dualistic universe. And so in order to have success, you have to understand what it is to fail. You have to understand the lowest of the lows so that you can rise to the top. And for me, it was about I can't speak for anybody outside of myself, but for me, it was about this feeling of entitled, like earning it. Like my dad used to say, pay your dues, pay your dues, pay your dues. And then he finally, at one point, when he saw Frankie and Johnny afterwards, he said, you paid your dues.
Your dues.
And by that point,
That's
I didn't need my dad's approval anymore. I had sort of grown out of needing my dad's approval, but it was nice to hear it, But yeah, it's if you can do anything else in this world outside of acting and be happy and fulfilled, then do that. But if you're the crazy genius person that doesn't want to do anything else but write or direct then do that. And don't let anybody, you don't need anybody else's permission to do it. You don't need your mom or dad's or your teachers or whomever you're putting on a pedestal to tell you. And if you do, then I would suggest really, really listening to those voices, realizing those voices are not yours, and ripping them out at the root and starting from scratch and going after your bliss. Your bliss is going to lead you down the right path. You keep following there's a great book called Reality Transurfing by Vazine Zealand, this Russian physicist. He says, when you're in complete coherence, your brain that's coming up with all these schemes and your heart is in the right place. He called it the rustle of the morning stars. When you can feel the rustle of the morning stars, that thing that makes your heart open and your brain go, that's a great idea. Follow that bliss and you're golden.
So I hope you had some great takeaways from today's episode. If you did, hit that like button, hit subscribe. It really helps the channel out. That was Bert Rotundo. I'm your host, Megan A. Tully, and this has been Is There More? Thanks for listening.